I'm focused on this theory cause it keeps me from his fire. The Holy Ghost was with me, so my fear I leave behind. My sins were all diminished when he took that breath and died. And if you think I'ma give up on my God, the devil is a lie. The devil is a lie. The devil is a lie. Is a lie.
Hello, this is Christine Barr. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Unfortunately, who's my governor, has declared that January is Muslim American Month, and some people are like, "Oh, where's the Christian month?" And I thought this was interesting that it's not Arab, American month or something, but it's specifically Muslim, American month. And some people are like, man, that's really hard pandering, and that seems pretty obvious. They got abandoned as far as in the November election and the Muslim community coming out for Donald Trump, whether they were for him or just in opposition to the Democrats, made a difference. But Democrats support some things that are things that are contrary to their faith very hard. They push and they support, on top of them feeling like you didn't take a hard stance with the foreign policy that we think that you should have taken, so we're going to rebel against you, and maybe Trump will be competent enough to at least have peace, but what you're doing is just allowing more carnage to happen. So on one hand, I think it's pandering, and another thing is that it could be bait to signal in right-wing people to speak out against this, so the Muslims can be like, oh yeah, reminder, these people don't like us too much. So I'm gonna, I don't know, talk about it. I don't like it, so maybe in some regard I'm gonna take the bait. I'm gonna try to be as respectful as possible. But people don't like your opinion. They just don't like your opinion. But it's not great that she did that. So I want to talk about it. Which is funny because I just happened upon this article, I don't know, maybe 15-20 minutes ago, but earlier I was last night I started listening to the podcast with Peter Bet David and Wes Huff, who Wes Huff just did the Joe Rogan interview, and I've talked about his kind of rise to notoriety, which I can briefly go into. But they talked for more than 2 hours about different topics, but they did get into Islam. He mentioned Andrew Tate and why he converted, and I thought that was an interesting segment, especially since we talked about Andrew Tate yesterday, and I briefly mentioned why he converted. And so I wanted to talk about that segment and react to it. And so I think it's kind of a good pairing with the subject with Whitmer. And someone said, when's Catholic month? Believe me, people are saying stuff like that. People are saying stuff like that, even if you don't want to do specifically Catholic and you just do Christian, because wait, don't let me get ahead of myself, guys. Don't let me get ahead of myself. And I do also want to touch on something that Jake Sullivan said with April Ryan, who's a very woke journalist who's in the press corps, about AI. And I was watching Ben Shapiro show, and he played that clip, and then I just kind of paused, and I'm like, wait a second. I rewound it and listened to it again, and then I went and I played it for my sister. And I'll tell you why when we get to that segment. That's going to be the first thing I probably talk about because I want to get that out of the way. But before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on the website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate because it does cost to stream and run my site, all that good stuff. So you guys can support. I very much appreciate it. I understand times are very tough and for a lot of people, and many of you have supported in the past, and I appreciate it. I do plan on making the trip to the inauguration and taking photos, hopefully running into people, having some impromptu interviews if I can. And long story short, if you would like to help with that as well, I'd appreciate it. You guys can go to the website and support with that endeavor as well. You guys can also do super chats or stars for on Facebook. Make sure that you're watching, that you are subscribed, and make sure that you guys do hit the notification bells. Sometimes I get messages from people and they see a random video of mine. This shouldn't really be random because I post all the time. I'm like, oh, you haven't posted in a while. I haven't seen. It's like, I've been posting. I don't know why YouTube doesn't want us to see each other, but I'm here and I'm doing the work. I'm out here trying anyway to do the work. So, make commenting, liking, all that stuff helps. But make sure that you guys are actually subscribed and you are hitting the notification bells. And if still YouTube doesn't want you to see my content, you guys know that I do stream every day. And if I don't, I usually announce it in advance that, I'm sick that day or I'm going to take the week off or something. So just make sure that you're subscribing all the stuff. Please go ahead and check out different merchandise on the website, t-shirts and mugs and all kinds of different things. So I also have books you guys can check out on Amazon that are nonfiction, and I have fiction books, all kinds of stuff. So please check out my content. I want to say this. Yesterday I mentioned that I watched the whole entire Lyla Rose Surrounded video and that I was going to react to it all. And I originally thought, gosh, this is really long because it was like an hour and 40 minutes. And then I talk and react to all the arguments or whatever. It's going to take a long time to record this. And I'm so glad I did not record it live because it would have taken forever. And I thought I might maybe it would take days. I just decided to knock it out last night. So I was recording for like 6 hours. It was so long. I was up till like 4 a.m. recording stuff. And so it's funny and I'm watching Lyla Rose, and she's so sweet to all these people. And some of them had some nasty stuff to say to her. Some of them went off on her. One of them called her the C word at the end. And they were so in their feels. One woman was so in her feels about stuff. It said some of the darkest, most evil things in their conversation. And she's like, I was glad I was able to push back with stuff because she was coming with her emotions and I was going with facts. And I'm like, how dare you say such stuff? And so I just, I was more blunt with my analysis than Lyla was. And there are moments I'm just like, I don't have it in me right now to be as patient as Lyla was. And that's just kind of maybe not my ministry anyway, but or maybe I don't need to pray more. I don't know. But she was so sweet to these people. And she one girl was like, if it's murder, then why don't you just, act like it's murder? And so Lyla does think abortion is murder, but she doesn't think that women are culpable to be the murderers. And she is, being yelled out by this woman who had an abortion, and Lyla is just jumping through hoops to not refer to her or think of her as a murderer, while she's saying, I know what I did, but Lyla's just like, yeah, but did you know it was a baby? You don't want to call it a baby, and she's just going through all these hoops to not call her a murderer, and then but she's still offended because she's still like, y'all think I'm a murderer. It's like, well, they do think you killed someone. So it's just really interesting. That's the woman who called her C word at the end. So I want to say this because at the end, when they're all dialoguing, about how they thought people did, someone said something like, I was really glad the women of color pushed back on her. And I was really disappointed in the behavior by, I think maybe all the women of color, Black women, who spoke to her. I think Ceci and Jack Prince and Dana, were all African American. If Ceci was something else, I apologize, but and they were so emotional, and Dana wasn't like obviously like emotional. She didn't like yell, but by the end of it, she's the woman who said that Scott Peterson shouldn't have been charged for murdering his unborn son Connor, who was 8 months. And she's saying that was a clump of cells, that was a mass of cells. If it's in my body, then it's not alive, and all kinds of crazy stuff. I'm like, that's emotional nonsense. It's not intuitive, it's not scientific, it's really not logical. And then to say that Lyla, who's quoting a lot of science and other stuff, to say that she's coming with emotions and you're coming with facts and correcting it's just ridiculous. So people, are nodding their heads and like yes, because they feel like Black women going off, and and they're just talking, they got a little attitude, maybe they raise their voices and stuff, and like they're winning. But that's not how you display logic. That's not how you win conversations or debates or whatever. Maybe that's how you win a crowd of people who maybe don't know better. But I thought it was embarrassing. So Black women, can we do better? Like, all of them should have did better. Like, people in general need to be better, but I they're just like, yes, the Black women coming at her. I'm like, you did Black women no favors. You did Black women no favors. And I don't think you did the pro-choice narrative any favors either, being offended that she said abortion scars women, and then you're all like rabid, folks who are highly emotional and obviously not healed and recovered from your emotional scars. That's this. So you know, I didn't like their behavior at all. And then people are like, Dana did the best. I'm like, Dana said the most evil things that day. I'd have been like, oh no, I'm not associated with these people. If to say the things that she said, I would. Anyway, I recorded the whole thing. It's gonna take me some time to edit it, obviously, and I'll release them as I edit them. But just be on the lookout for those. I haven't started editing it. I'll probably edit some tonight. But yeah, I was up till about 4 something in the morning just recording my reaction to that. So I'm really glad I did not do that live with all of you, because it would have been a long time. I'm kind of tempted to maybe react to some of it on TikTok. I don't, because people do talk about that subject all the time on TikTok, and some of those people are actually on TikTok. But I don't know how quick that would get flagged and mass reported and taken down. So I don't know. I'm contemplating it. I don't know for sure, but maybe I will. But I don't know if I can do the whole thing again and react, because like I said, I was recording for a very long time. But be on the lookout for that. I just wanted to give you guys a heads up. So first thing I want to mention before we get into the I'll talk about the I think the Whew. I want to talk about the Whitmer stuff first, or the Wes Huff stuff first. Let me at least talk about the Jake Sullivan thing first. So Jake Sullivan was asked by April Ryan a question about national security and AI, and this was really funny to me. And some people are just like, "What? That's stupid," and just kind of went about their business. But this is funny to me, and I'll tell you why. Let me at least play the clip. And then I'll tell you why I'm tickled about this, okay? I'll tell you why I'm tickled about this. AI is racist, guys. Okay, here we go.
You're saying that it's a huge national security issue. Is there a concern about how it does not, AI is on the national security front, is not accurately depicting or scanning people of color? Because we're understanding civil rights groups are very upset about that, how it's misidentifying. Is that a concern with national security as well?
Yes, it is. Of course, it's if you think about the series of concerns that are raised by the advent of artificial intelligence, they range across economic, military, and social risks. One of those is bias. And there have been a lot of studies to show that bias is a genuine challenge when it comes to artificial intelligence, and the ways in which that could undermine social cohesion in the United States and globally has national security and terrorism has national security implications.
You're saying that it's a huge.
So okay. So I was listening to Ben Shapiro's show earlier as I was like just, getting ready for you guys. And this clip popped on and I paused it. I was like, what? And I rewound it to listen to it again. And then I took my phone and I shared it with my sister. And she's just like, what? AI and bias? First of all, if there's the bias in the AI, it's something that you programmed in there. Like when Google started doing some of their AI stuff, and there were certain prompts that they wouldn't do that seemed to be, I don't know, they were so pro black or whatever that they would make prompts or images that were just silly, historically inaccurate. There's certain things that they wouldn't say if it seemed like they thought it was gonna be too pro-white or whatever. So I think since then they have tweaked AI and it's a lot better than it was when they first started announcing different stuff coming out. So if there's biases in the programming and stuff, that's the result is the programmer. It didn't become self-aware and say, I am racist. That's not really the case. I don't know why the civil rights groups are pressed about it, because I guess there would be some issues if the AI isn't properly seeing people of color. If you're like looking for an Arab terrorist or something like that, but I just don't see civil rights groups going, we're very offended because they're not going to be able to properly identify terrorists, or I wonder why they're so annoyed by it, other than they need a reason to cry, scream racism. But this was funny to me because I went to go see the movie, which was highly panned, but I chuckled. I had a funny time with my family seeing the movie. The American Society of Magical Negroes. Okay. You guys remember that movie that came out with David Alan Grier, and I don't remember anybody else's cast names or whatever, but that movie came out. It seemed like nobody liked it. You had people on the right who decidingly were like, nah, from the trailers, that they were like, nah, that's racist, it's terrible. And then people on the left didn't like it because it wasn't like woke enough. And so as far as cohesion with the story, there were lots of ways that it could have been better. Overall, I enjoyed it, though. I had some chuckles. There were certain things that I found funny. So, I had a fun time at the movies. I did a review on it some time ago, and I thought there were some interesting narratives that you could get out of it or whatever. But there was a part in the movie at this company that got in trouble with the world because they were making AI software, I think for I don't know, it was phones or something like that. But there was a group of very, very dark Africans, and the software would not pick them up. They wouldn't do the facial recognition. So they had like a PR nightmare. And people were saying they were racist. And so that was a big thing that the company had to fix. So it was a big plot line in the film. So to me, I'm looking at this and it's like, life imitating art moment of something that will seem like so hyper ridiculous in the film. And I'm watching a press conference and she's like saying something that was in this satirical movie, So that's why I found it so funny. I don't know what all these reactions and comments were from the civil rights groups concerned about the bias of AI and how hurtful or whatever it's been to people. But it was just funny to hear April Ryan bring it up and Jake Sullivan to talk about it, because it was a subject in the satirical movie, about racism, perceptions of racism, and how people have to basically go along to get along and integrate into different cultures, even if it makes them uncomfortable and disguising their voices and all kinds of different stuff. There's some complex themes in the movie. I can understand why a lot of people didn't like it, But anyway, that's all I have to say about it. I wish I could have found you guys a clip so you know more what I was talking about, but it's not like it was a popular movie. Most people panned it, and there's not a lot of clips floating about that particular scene on the internet. I couldn't find it, and it wasn't available on any of the apps that I had, so you guys are just gonna have to, if you're that curious, you can look it up yourself. But I just thought it was funny, and if I can find it, maybe I'll do a short clip mashup and post this on the internet. But anyway, let's move on. Pete Hegseth was having his confirmation hearings today. I have seen some clips. I have not been following the hearing all day. It seems like he's doing well. There's people yelling at him, and it's very much women yelling at the cat meme kind of going on with him. And other big news is that Jack Smith released his document going through some of the things that Trump would have been, that he was charged with. And so something they're latching on, we'll talk about this more tomorrow. It just deserved more time, and there's other things that I wanted to talk about, just to be fair. And so people on the left right now, just to let you know, are latching on to the fact that Jack Smith is saying that they had ample evidence and they believe that they would have got a conviction. So people are now saying, aha, evidence that Donald Trump committed insurrection and he shouldn't have been president. And if the people had only known these things, then he wouldn't be president. And they're presuming all these different things. It's a presumption that he still would have been convicted. The jury still has to decide that. And they're like, well, can't do anything now because he's president. It's like, okay. There was all this commentary and narrative before that he's running to not go to jail. And people still decided that they wanted him and not Kamala Harris and not Joe Biden, likely, if he still remained on the ticket. So if America decided, and not just Electoral College, but he did win the popular vote, if America still decided that he should be the president, why are you so confident that the jury would have been like, ooh, analyzing the evidence, yeah, sure, let's put him in jail and he's not going to be the president? Why do you feel so confident about that? I can understand why you feel confident about that if you're going to do your case in DC and people are slanted against him. I can understand that, but I think that's more about a tainted sort of bias in the jury pool rather than maybe even the facts of the case. So anyway, just a little prelude to what we'll probably talk about tomorrow is this is going to be the new thing. This is going to be the new thing. In 2016, Democrats did not just lie down and just take it when Donald Trump became president. There were people who actually did oppose, the certification of the votes. Vice President Joe Biden didn't really entertain them, to his credit, but different Democrats, like Jamie Raskin, for example, were trying to stop the certification of the election. So Democrats pretending that didn't happen is insane. There were America, so many Democrats in America were writing letters and doing videos. Celebrities were doing videos. There's all these pleas to try to stop the electors for casting their ballots for Donald Trump. I was almost an elector. I kind of made a political miscalculation when I was running for that spot, but it's probably for the best because I probably would have flipped my sister out getting all these letters, including some people getting threatening letters sent to their house. I know some people had like dramatic readings of people's tearful letters, but people are getting all these letters of people trying to convince them to change their votes, knowing that Donald Trump won the popular votes of their state, and saying, hey, will you just kind of subvert the will of the people of your state and cast the ballots for Hillary Clinton? Like, we know Donald Trump won, but we have this opportunity to still stop him. So can you just, forget about the will of the people of your state and just, and you may be Republican and you were voted in good conscience of the Republicans at your convention, but can you just ignore all of that and still cast a ballot for Hillary Clinton because she should have won and I like her better? Like, they were trying that, and I don't know why we memory hole that. Okay, but beyond those things that they did try to stop him from being president, nobody stormed the Capitol or anything like that. No, there was no riot at the Capitol. that day, though people did storm the Michigan Capitol. I was there that day. Nobody broke any windows or anything like that, but they're protesters and they were chanting. They wanted us to not cast the ballots for him. And man, they were amazed by the black people that showed up and supported Donald Trump. And my dad just went through protesters. He's like, God bless Trump. God bless Trump. And they're looking like, what? We don't understand. It's not computing. But anyway, they started this narrative, or was continuing on this narrative of Trump is illegitimate. You had Obama, who was spying on the campaign, Hillary Clinton, who had started laying the foundations of the Russia collusion stuff, which they planted because they were trying to distract from her emails, things that President Obama knew and they was briefed on or whatever. He didn't call her up and call everybody and say, knock it off. Like, come on. We don't want to undermine the faith in our process or undermine, our country by making the American people think that Putin has a puppet or whatever. No, they ran with that narrative for such a long time in Donald Trump's presidency. Eventually he got so annoyed with Comey because they're saying all this stuff about him. He knows it's not true. And they're not just like debunking that or whatever. So frustration, he ends up getting rid of him and it becomes a big obstruction case. And then Mueller and all that stuff happens. And just all these things were undermining him constantly. Hakeem Jeffries was like, the more we learn about this election, it's just illegitimate and Trump is illegitimate. And so that's all the stuff that they kept pushing and pushing and pushing to undermine the sitting president for years. It was a huge distraction. So Jack Smith saying that, we would have got a conviction. Well, you probably think that. All the prosecutors probably think that, or most of them think that when they bring a case and they start going through trials. But that doesn't mean that you're going to win, because people beat, them all the time. They get innocent rulings all the time from the jury. Okay? So you can think that all you want, but that doesn't mean that that's true. Doesn't mean that it's true. But that's what the Democrats are taking that as gospel truth, thinking that the election would have been changed. At the end of the day, you still ran who you ran, and I didn't want them to win. You ran who you ran, and I didn't want them to win. I'll just say it one more time. You ran who you ran, and I didn't want them to win. And that's the end of the story. But they're going to use this to say he's illegitimate, and that's going to be their play for, I don't know how long they're going to push it, because I think a lot of people are bored with it. So I don't think it'll probably be as long lasting. It'll be a narrative for a while, but I don't think it'll be as long lasting as the Russia collusion stuff, because I think the culture kind of has shifted. The pendulum has swung, in Trump's direction, with Meta, Facebook, and just so much stuff. And he won the popular vote. I think people are bored. People are sick of it. So I don't know how long they'll push it. News stations are losing money. I don't think the resistance stuff is going to be what it was maybe back in the day. But maybe they're hoping that this will turn things around and they'll enthuse their crazy MSNBC audience and stuff again. I don't know. But anyway, we'll talk more about that, going through some of the stuff that Jack Smith said in detail tomorrow. At least that's the plan. There could be juicier stuff that I want to relay, but I think that's what I want to talk about tomorrow. But I just want to let you know it's news I did not forget about. Okay. I want to talk about Whitmer. We'll talk about Whitmer first and this Muslim American Month. So, the Detroit Free Press, which slants left, by the way, wrote this piece. Governor Whitmer declared January Muslim American Month, what it means in Michigan. So, there's already comments. Where's Catholic month? Okay, I already got that. Where's Jewish month? Now, I think having the religious stuff is very strange. Very strange to me, because there's ideologies associated with that. It's not just a celebration of a people. it's a celebration and uplifting of ideology, right? If you're Jewish, there's religion there, but there's also an ethnic aspect there. So it would make more sense to have a Jewish month. I don't necessarily think you should have a Catholic month, but if the point of the month is to acknowledge um different accomplishments or impacts of faith, why hasn't she done a Christian month? Or I mean, someone mentioned specifically Catholic or whatever. I mean, that would make more sense, I think, than the Muslim month. But overall, why not the Christian month? There's so many churches and prominent figures of faith in Michigan and has been for a long time. So why skip over all of that and decide January, yep, we're appealing to Muslims. Here's your month. Here's your month. Now, if you were going to say, here's Arabs or something like that, that's not what she did. She said Muslim. Muslim American month. Okay? And Islam is a religion, but it's also has like some political social kind of ramifications attached to along with it too. So someone in the comments already pointed out she wants the votes. Bingo. I think that's absolutely true. But let's read on. Governor Whitmer declared January Muslim American Month, what it means in Michigan. Michigan is home to nearly 250,000 Muslims, and Michigan governor recently honored contribution members of the faith have made to the state and nation by declaring January Muslim American Month. Governor Gretchen Whitmer announced January is Muslim American Heritage Month in Michigan in January 1st proclamation. The state features cities with sizable Muslim populations, including Dearborn and Hamtramck and Metro Detroit. Whereas Muslims have inhabited the land of the United States since before the country's founding, Muslim majority Morocco was the first country to recognize the United States of America. Together, the two countries signed the Treaty of Friendship in 1786, which remains America's longest standing unbroken treaty. And whereas Muslim Americans have played significant roles in the founding, development, and prosperity of the United States of America, Whitmer's proclamation says that she's not wrong. There's but that doesn't there were some negative things that happened where we had to do defensive things that were like, yeah, totally, that we integrated into our society when there were like pirates that kept doing raiding, pillaging, all kinds of different stuff, and we're like, whoa, we really need to get our military stuff together and assure that these ships that are protecting their merchandise and stuff have a right for their Second Amendment. That's why you wrote it. You guys can use your cannons and protect yourself. So, there's some things that folks are leaving out. But anyway, what is Muslim American Heritage Month in Michigan? Muslim American Heritage Month recognizes faith and identity of contributions American Muslims in Michigan, according to the proclamation. Whitmer in the proclamation recognized the achievements of American Muslims in such fields as science, tech, entertainment, sports, music, and entrepreneurship. What is Islam? Islam is among the largest faiths in the world. The Muslim Unity Center of Bloomfield Hills said the word Islam is an Arabic word that means peace, purity, submission, and obedience to the will of the Almighty God. They could say peace. That's not how it's spread. And comes from the Arabic root word salama, which means peace. The Arabic word Muslim means someone who submits himself to the will of the Almighty God. The center said Muhammad, members of the faith believe was the last and final messenger sent by God. Muhammad was a living example of Islam, the center explained. When is Muslim? Okay. So, if we're going to highlight a faith and put it on blast and put it on a pedestal, And I understand it's Muslim Heritage Month and stuff, but it's you're choosing not to go by different regions and ethnic identities and stuff. Islam is a religion, okay? And religions have ideologies, and it's centered around Muhammad. And Muhammad was a warlord who's also a pedophile, who they believe is the last messenger, and things that they say directly, conflicts with like Christianity and stuff. And so you have conflicting stuff. It's like they can't be right and I can't be right. Somebody's got to be wrong and they're wrong. But if you're looking to, like, I can look at Jesus and that's a perfect sinless life, and you study the life of Muhammad and that's not a great guy. It's not a great guy. So, I would love if someone asked a question like you're doing this month, like, what do you think of XYZ that Muhammad did? What would you think? When is Muslim American Heritage Month in Michigan? Muslim American Heritage Month takes place throughout January in Michigan. Who are American Muslims in Michigan? Now, this is kind of funny to me. Michigan is a home of a population of more than 241,000 Muslims, according to the data from the World Population Review. American Muslims make up about 1.1% of the U.S. population, about 3 to 45 million people, and come from diverse backgrounds. Pew Research said there are Black, white, Arab, and Middle Eastern, Hispanic, and Asian American, the mix of immigrants to the U.S. born, adherents of to Islam. This is the part that I think is kind of funny. Who are some notable American Muslims from Michigan? So now we have this month. We have this month designated now. And the Detroit Free Press, again, who leans left, well, they are left wing. Here are some. It's a major paper, but it leans left. In the Detroit News leans right. Here are some notable American Muslims from Michigan. Malcolm X. I think that's pretty good notable example. And Rashida Tlaib. Rashida Tlaib is terrorist sympathizer. Rashida Tlaib. A lot of people don't find her to be a great example, but she's Muslim, so she's notable and from Michigan, so that is true, and that's their list of two that they could come up with as they write this report about Muslim American Month. Okay. Where did American Muslims come from? Various accounts say Muslims arrived in America long before the founding of the U.S. That's enough what we have to read. I do want to since they mentioned Malcolm X, I love any excuse where I can mention this clip from Malcolm X. So since they brought him up, I would like to play this clip about what he said regarding white liberals.
There are many whites who are trying to solve the problem, but you never see them going under the label of liberals. That white person that you see calling himself a liberal is the most dangerous thing in the entire Western Hemisphere. He's the most deceitful. He's like a fox, and a fox is always more dangerous in the forest than the wolf. You can see the wolf coming. You know what he's up to, but the fox will fool you. He comes at you with his mouth shaped in such a way that even though you see his teeth, you think he's smiling.
I think there are many whites who act friendly toward Negroes. A fox acts friendly toward the lamb. Mm-hmm. And usually the fox is the one who ends up with the lamb chop on his plate. Mm-hmm. The wolf doesn't act friendly, and therefore the wolf has more difficulty in getting the lamb chop in his plate.
I'd like to point out, though, that
I say that because it is usually if you study the structure of the Negro community, economically, politically, civically, psychologically, and otherwise, it's controlled by the white liberal, mm-hmm. who usually poses as the friend of the Negro.
Okay, so I hope when people think about Whitmer, famous Muslims in the Michigan, that they go to that clip and they think about that with Gretchen Whitmer, because there's just a lot of shadiness going on with her and white liberals in general, I guess. But anyway, why do this? Why do this? It's a pretty big thing, I think, for the governor to declare. You know, most people shrug their shoulders and maybe ignore this stuff. But why go this route to recognize Muslims in this kind of way? Well, I think it's obvious that they were upset. Democrats were upset that they lost control. There's this minority group and they're not obeying in the way that they want them to obey. There's a lot of Muslims in the state who did not like that the Biden administration would not, I don't know, be more anti-Israel blatantly, and that they were kind of being too much of fence setters and didn't have clarity on where they stood on their side, in which they didn't have moral clarity one way or another. I mean, I think they should have been stronger as far as in defense of Israel, but them twiddling their thumbs, this, I think, really prolonged the war and just caused probably more people to be harmed, to be frank. So there's just a lot of incompetence there. So at the end of the day, a lot of people were like, I'm going to withhold my vote. I'm going to vote for Jill Stein. I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. Because at least I felt the world was actually safer under Donald Trump. And there were some interviews where people said stuff like that. Like, what about the Muslim ban? It wasn't really a Muslim ban, but they're just like, I don't care. But I can't vote for Biden. I can't vote for Kamala. And they would say that their support is a genocide. Like, they're funding these wars and stuff. So they didn't like them for reasons that I wouldn't necessarily not like them, but they decided they didn't like them. Okay. And then there's another aspect that I think isn't talked about, but the beliefs and the things that they push on the left are not aligned with things that many of them believe. And they have values in beliefs that are conservative, as far as, they don't want LGBT books in their kids' schools and people telling them that they can change their gender. And one story that we did cover quite a bit was in Hamtramck, and that was one of the cities that was mentioned in the article. They decided that they were only going to fly neutral flags on city property. If you live in Hamtramck and you want to fly a gay pride flag, you can do that. But as far as like a city property, you can fly the United States flag, you can fly the Dearborn flag. I mean, not Dearborn flag, the Hamtramck flag. You can fly the state flag, the POW flag, and there was another flag, but you can't fly a Christian flag. We're not going to fly a Muslim flag. We're not going to fly an LGBT flag. It's a neutral policy. And that brought out all these protesters to a Muslim city council with a Muslim mayor and talking about how unfair it is. And it's unfair because LGBTs are minority groups, and when you treat minority groups the same as everyone else, or you would have neutral policies that actually disadvantages them, and all kinds of other nonsense. And our attorney general came out there, not to one of those meetings, but at somebody's house to talk about that stuff. And she's a lesbian, so she didn't like the policy and stuff either. Again, just treating everyone else the same is so mean to these people. And some people, like there was one couple that actually kissed each other in front of this group of Muslims in protest. Okay. So do you think they just twiddled their thumbs and was just like, ooh, I'm totally going to keep voting Democrat? I think all this stuff compounds together. So there's things that they're not aligned with. So it's going to be funny and interesting seeing what is the left going to do. Are they still going to double down on all the super woke stuff that people have rejected, or are they going to risk losing a big population of people? I don't think just making these kind of gestures is what's going to draw people in and be like, oh yeah, I'm totally going to vote for a Democratic governor next time because they made a month to commemorate, our faith or celebrate our faith. I don't think that's the case. I think it's so transparent. And people still care about substance. And, and everybody's really trying to pander to that group now. So I don't know who's going to out pander and win. Donald Trump got some he's in some heat by some folks on the right, because I was looking at his program for the inauguration, and they when they do the benediction, they have several people doing the benediction prayer, and they have a rabbi, they have an imam, and they have a pastor who's from Detroit, and who I know, and Donald Trump went to his church. It was the only church that would like basically let him in the city, really, to host the event. And it was a rough neighborhood. I talked about how when Donald Trump said some comments about Detroit, I'm like, oh, how dare he say that? I'm like, Donald Trump's been just to rough neighborhoods in Detroit. They didn't take him to nice Grosse Pointe or something like that and be like, yeah, it's Detroit. He went to Detroit. Okay. So he knows there's some rough areas in there. And then then you had a Catholic diocese who also going to do the final benediction. I thought that was interesting. I'm like, oh, we're really going for inclusion there. But the issue people are raising is that he's kind of associated, or I don't know how deeply associated Hezbollah-ish this guy is, or just pro, but there's some connections there that people are like, they need to change this. They need to swap this out. This isn't great. This isn't great. The staff made some errors there. As far as that goes. I saw that list and I'm probably gonna leave a little early. I will probably, to be frank, I actually did leave a little early at the last inauguration because my feet were, I had enough. They were really cold and they hurt, yet they were still numb. And I told my sister, I'm like, let's try to get back to the train so we can beat the crowd. So I knew when Trump was gearing up toward the end of his speech because I could just kind of tell because I listened to a lot of them at that point in time. And so we left just a little bit toward the end and made it on the train back to we stayed in Maryland because it was cheaper. Nothing seems to be cheap now, but all the prices are insane for the hotels and stuff. But yeah, that made some waves, but they're going for inclusion. I don't know if they're going to make some swaps or changes or whatnot, but everybody's pandering because people understand that this is a large group of people. I just want to urge folks that that cannot be what just takes over our society and our brain, to kind of let the will to pander to get votes or whatever to win. We've seen some horrific things in the UK come out with the grooming stories, and people didn't want to speak up and really do their due diligence when there were girls who were being abused and raped and so on because they didn't want to be called racist. So I just I caution people not to pander too hard because there will be repercussions for society. Just, FYI, I'm not saying that anything like that's going to happen in the US, but people are people, so it's not that we're not capable of being that stupid. So, we may have different systems or whatever, but that doesn't mean the people in general are really different. Everybody can get to a certain kind of point. By the way, what I was saying or trying to articulate when I said that there are certain things that happened that did make an impact on the U.S., specifically the Barbary pirates, kept attacking and stuff, and it was they're the reason why we formed a navy. So yeah, you can't say they're not impactful. And they're Muslim world very, very influential in the slave trade and all that stuff too. So very, very impactful in history indeed. So lots of things they want to leave out though, I'm sure for their for their month. I think there's another aspect there that people have pointed out that's also true, that they're pandering, but there's also they're laying a trap and they're baiting probably people like me to speak out about this so they can go, aha, these folks don't like you. And it's not that I don't love these folks and like these folks and appreciate them being, loving Americans and being patriotic, and so glad to see many of them at the Trump rallies and so on. But I don't like Islam. I don't agree with it, and I believe they're leading people to hell. And they believe I'm leading people to hell. And we could be like, oh, we believe in so much stuff and we respect Jesus. I don't believe that you do, because you don't believe that he is what he said that he was. And you don't think that he died, don't think he resurrected. So that throws my whole faith out of the window. So we both can't be right. We both can't be right. So you saying you respect him because you say he's a prophet that's still a downgrade from God. So, we're not on the same page there. Doesn't mean that you can't be great people and we can't be great friends and that you can't contribute great things to society. But I don't like your religion. And I deeply would like you to find the truth and reject Islam and find the truth. And if you believe I'm wrong, I think it's only right that you feel that way about me. But the historical narrative and the truth about Christianity, or at least Jesus being crucified, if there's anything that we know about Jesus, that is that he was crucified under Pontius Pilate. If there's any fact that we know, that's the number one fact that historians know. So the things that they believe are just contrary to the data. So I love you though. I love you. And so Anyway, I want to talk about this interview with Wes Huff, still kind of continuing on with this conversation, because he was on Peter Bet-David's show, and they were talking about Islam in the West and why it seems like the Christian church is dying and why Islam is growing. I think there's some misconceptions about that, but Wes does address like those questions. And Peter brings up Andrew Tate. And we mentioned Andrew Tate a little bit yesterday. Andrew Tate is popular. He's like a red pill guy. He did convert to Islam. The reasons why he converted, which they don't get too much into this conversation, but it is brought up and I can enlighten you when we get to that part of the conversation. But he's been accused of some pretty terrible stuff, trafficking women, beating up women, sexually abusing them, assaulting them and stuff. And those cases are pending and going on stuff. And but at least from things that he has voluntarily said, he is a pimp or was a pimp and ran a cam girl business. And there's video of him talking about beating women and saying degrading things. And people are like, people can change. There's stuff him saying degrading things not even a week ago. Like, let me see if I bookmark something that folks are passing around the other day. It was something about him saying that all women are sex workers and you're either a sex worker for your husband, and if you can't get a husband, then you're a sex worker on OnlyFans. It was that's basically the gist of it. I'm paraphrasing. And if you're ugly, then you just get a normal job. And that's how he like ended it. If you're ugly, and I guess you can't. Oh, here we go. Fact. Women are sex workers. Their primary job now is to find one customer called a boyfriend to pay for their entire lives in return for the P word. If they fail at this, they do OnlyFans, or we'll call it popcorn, the same game with more than one customer. If they are ugly, they work a job badly and are miserable. and that is the wisdom of Andrew Tate. Now, Andrew Tate has said some things that make sense. He's said some things in contrast to feminism. So a lot of people share his stuff and they're like, yeah, he's right. Or he'll talk about how men have been taken advantage of in life and all kinds of different stuff. But the moral prescriptions that he gives are not good. And they're just degeneracy. And same thing with Pearl Davis. I've shared stuff that Pearl's done and talked about Pearl and the lack of, like, she'll say she's a Christian but just have no appreciation for redemption. People change their lives around, and just seems like she kind of just hates women. But I don't love the term pick me, because people throw that around all the time. But man, if someone fits that definition, I would say that that's Pearl. But yeah, that's Andrew Tate. So there was controversy with Benny Johnson, who had him on the same time that a Trump lawyer, Alina Habba, was on, and she was like, I'm a fan, and was saying that basically he was persecuted in the same way that Trump was persecuted and stuff. And even though she didn't know the facts of Andrew Tate's case. So, and I was talking about that yesterday because I just think that's so bad with people with proximity to the president to say things so stupid. It just doesn't reflect well on Trump. And I sadly, I do not still think he hires all the best people. I'm not saying he doesn't hire good people, but it's certainly not all the best people. Anyway, that's enough kind of intro to some stuff about Tate. As far as who Wes Huff is, to briefly try to go through this story, if you're not familiar with kind of the rise of Wes Huff, he is studying to get a PhD, but he's a biblical scholar, and he very, very informed young man, and he's 33. He has so much wisdom and stuff. And he had a channel a couple months ago. It was only like 10,000 followers on YouTube, and he is with a group that just does apologetics. I think it's Apologetics Canada or something like that. But he do videos on the Can You Trust the Bible? That's their series that they're working on and stuff. But he did some reply videos to this guy named Billy Carson, who believes in like aliens. He talks about the pyramids, and he believes Jesus was like half alien, and he has like some wild conspiracies. And he would talk about these emerald tablets that have this kind of information, and he would point to this different apocrypha gospels and things that are not canonized or things that are forgeries and other stuff like that to get all this kind of information. And he would make these claims about Christianity, saying that Jesus wasn't actually crucified, or there's early sources that say that he wasn't crucified, and Bible's been changed and all this stuff. So I've seen a lot of people respond to Billy Carson, like inspiring philosophy. Like I didn't know that much about Billy Carson. I see videos of him pop up, and he'd say crazy stuff, and people would reply to him. I'm like, do people believe this crazy stuff? I didn't realize how long he'd been around and how many people would kind of led astray with this crazy stuff. But he went on Joe Rogan, and he went on the Flagrant podcast, and he went on PBD's podcast as well, and talked about this crazy stuff. So Wes Huff did reply videos to him, and so a friend of Billy Carson had him on his podcast. And so his friend was a Christian, Andrew, and they're close. Like they were close anyway. Their wives are friends, their kids are friends, and they're friends. He went to his wedding, and their neighbors and stuff. So he just was going to have him on to talk about Christianity and stuff. But Andrew isn't, well versed in stuff, and he's like, I don't know how to like really explain stuff, or go against my friend who's so confident knows all this stuff about aliens and pyramids and emerald tablets and stuff. So he came across his editor had came across Wes Huff's videos, and he's like, oh, maybe we could just have him on, because I don't know the stuff, and so maybe we can have him on. And so he ran across Billy, and Billy said okay. I don't know why Billy didn't look up Wes Huff, Google him real quick, because I would have Googled somebody if I was going to be on a show with him, and then you would have immediately seen that he debunked stuff that Billy said. But I guess he didn't do that, and so Wes couldn't come to Florida, but he was online. And so there's all kinds of other drama that they go into detail. If you want to watch this full podcast, they do explain it in detail, a lot of detail on PBD's interview with him. I'm just trying to run through it so you guys understand the background a little bit. And anyway, Wes ended up destroying a lot of Billy's claims that they got to, and Billy wanted the podcast suppressed. And they did suppress it for a little while, but Wes did say online, like, I debated him and he doesn't want it out. And that just made more people more curious about it. And then eventually it got out and Billy was kind of destroyed. He went on an epic rant trying to debunk him and stuff. He just said all kinds of crazy stuff. He tried to do cease and desist orders to get them to stop. And it just caused more blow up and more traction for Wes. And so now Wes has, he quickly grew to 100,000 subscribers. He might have like 300,000 subscribers now, but he ended up going on Joe Rogan's podcast and he went on PBD's podcast. And so many people keep messaging and saying like, oh, I believe this crazy stuff Billy believed, and now I'm, now I see that was craziness and I'm going back to church. And so there's been a tremendous positive impact from him going on that podcast and debating Billy Carson and destroying him. So that led him to going on BD's podcast. And so that's kind of where we're at. So I watched this last night. I started watching, I'm sorry, I gotta switch to my YouTube. I started watching this last night and I finished it this afternoon, and it got to this part, and because we were talking about Tate yesterday, I thought this was interesting and worth talking about. So Peter was asking Wes, why do you think that Christianity is kind of dying in the West and Islam is growing? And so I don't really think that's kind of really a great representation of what's going on. I mean, the way that Islam spread throughout the world was through conquest. The way that it continues to kind of spread is through people immigrating and having families, where people in the West don't tend to be all like, hey, let's have a bunch of kids or something like that. And there's religious families that still continue to have a lot of kids, but it's just not our birth rate and stuff is going down. But something that Wes doesn't mention is that Islam is in trouble, because when people go on the internet and they have access to information and they learn more about Islam, they can see that it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And like they'll have a lot of criticisms about Christianity, and you can kind of go through there's a book I recommend that's very interesting, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. And that's written by Nabil Qureshi. He's no longer with us, but he ended up converting. You can find his testimony on YouTube. There's many videos about it, like 45-minute, like kind of sermons and Q&As and stuff. I really recommend that you watch it. His story, I mentioned David Wood the other day, and I recommend you guys finding David Wood's testimony about how he came to Christ. David Wood ended up leading Nabil to Christ. And that was a long journey that took some years through their friendship. And he's very much a part of, Nabil's story, very much a part of Nabil's book and his journey of finding Christ. But Nabil, very, very strong roots in his family as far as Islam. And, he liked to ask questions to Christians to challenge their faith, but he believed that the Bible had been corrupted, that, didn't really believe that Jesus was crucified, and all kinds of different stuff. So when he met David had answers for his objections. Like, oh, the Bible's been corrupted. He's like, we have like thousands and thousands of transcripts. No, it hasn't been corrupted. Where has it been corrupted? And so he had to do some like digging and critical thinking about some stuff when he was challenged by his friend David Wood. And so they went through some years and some examinations and stuff, and studying the Gospels, the reliability of the Gospels, of the historicity of the Gospels, and looking at Jesus, the crucifixion, the objections to that. And so eventually Nabil was like, David asked Bill, like, okay, we've been talking about this stuff for a while. Like, how do you feel about the gospel and like the reliability of it? And he's like, I'm 87% certain that like the gospel and stuff is true. And he's like, 87%? Like, why don't you just convert if it's 87%? And he's like, because I'm 100% sure about Islam being true. And he's like, okay, we've been doing this critical analysis of the gospel. And there was like 3 tenets that they really had to look at. Like, did Jesus claim to be God? Did he die? And did he resurrect? And so he really analyzed those claims, because if you destroy those claims, you destroy Christianity. So he really analyzed those claims, and he's like, why don't you do what you did with Christianity and scrutinize Islam in a similar way? So he decided to do that. And so he had his criteria for justifying Islam was to look at the reliability of the Quran and the life of Prophet Muhammad. And when he looked into the reliability of the Quran, the chain of custody and the preservation of it and stuff definitely did not meet the standards and stuff that he had held up to like Christianity, and that fell apart. And when he actually started to really read other stuff like the Hadith and so on, there were things in it that he was just kind of like, what the? And then he'd like go to his dad, like, Dad, this stuff says this. And then his dad was like, no, just here's a book. And he would like go to a book that a scholar had instead of like the actual sources to like explain the stuff. But the actual content of what they believe like horrified him. And then he really started looking into Muhammad, and he realized this was not a peaceful man. This was not a religion of peace, and that there were issues with him. Like when he first started to get the divine revelation, he thought, it was a demon who was talking to him, and believe in that he considered unaliving himself. And so there's just all these issues, but mostly he's an immoral warlord who's also a pedophile. So Muhammad wasn't the man that he believed. And so after that, he needed time to kind of grieve, because Christianity is true, Islam is wrong. It wasn't what he thought it was. But no, even before he got to his grieving process of knowing that he should leave the faith, he needed like signs. So God gave him a open vision and 3 dreams. And after that, he decided to leave Islam, and his family did not take it well. And it's a very you feel for him. And David always kind of felt bad for him, because he's like, there's a lot of real world repercussions for people who go ahead and they convert. And his family, they were very tight and loving, and it was going to cause a real uproar, and it did, but he still sought the truth and was able to make that conversion and led a lot of people to the Lord for the short time that he lived afterward. And he passed away from cancer. But it's an amazing story. It's an amazing book. I recommend you read it. You guys, if you don't want to read it, you guys can get an audio book. I that's how I listen to it on audio, on Audible. Amazing story. So and then you also understand a lot about Islam, and how, because he starts the book off talking about his childhood and how important it was to him, and how Islam and how they Muslim American stuff will look at Americans and how they view their religion. So you really get the perspective of how difficult it was for him, and to make that change, and how you really kind of should deal with people when you're trying to get them to convert and stuff. So I can't recommend it enough to people to go check out his story. David Wood and Nabil, they just, it's my Roman Empire. I love talking about it. But anyway, let's I mentioned that to say I'm sorry, I mentioned that to say that Islam has a problem, because once you actually really analyze the data like Nabil did, you see a lot of issues, and it can't be historically accurate. I mean, do you trust Jesus from like the accounts of like the Gospels, which have not been corrupted, when you have first century stuff, with people relative to with the life within Jesus, or relative to in that time frame? Or do you trust someone who not even wrote some stuff? People wrote the stuff with the Quran afterwards, the stuff that they remembered because it was oral at first. Do you trust Muhammad, who was like, all the stuff came like 600 years later when they were writing this stuff? If I wrote things about my father and someone came later 600 years and was like, no, ignored that stuff, I had the true revelation of who Keith Barr was. Why would that make sense to you? And then Wes also explains that there's things that Muhammad learned or believed that were in like later apocrypha texts that were not accurate about Jesus, that were around, that people believe. Like there was a story about Jesus as a young child or whatever, having clay birds and then turning them into real birds or whatever, and that was something that Muslims believed about Jesus, but that's not an actual thing that happened. So he's like taking snippets of things that aren't actually accurate to what we know about Jesus. So there's all kinds of issues, all kinds of problems, and the internet is a problem for Islam because people have access to information. So I was reading about different people who are saying, can Islam actually survive the age of the internet, because there's so much information available, and so there's so many debates that happen online, and there's just, again, the resources, you can just go to them yourself, and if you are seeking truth, you can't read through all those things and be like, oh gosh, all this actually connects and makes sense, and all this must be true and everyone else must be wrong. So with that being said, let's actually finally start watching this exchange.
This is kind of where I'm going to here right now. Andrew Tate and I are speaking, and I'm sure you know who Andrew Tate is.
Mm-hmm.
Year and a half ago, he gets out of jail. I'm there, the first person to interview him. He had an issue with BBC. We're sitting there talking, and he says, when I was in jail, I decided to convert to being a Muslim, religion of Islam. Okay. Tell me why. I don't know if you know his reason or not. Have you heard his reason?
I have heard him articulate.
And he
this.
says, when I was there, how many Christian friends of mine and fans wrote me a letter? None. Do you know how many Muslims wrote me a letter? I can't even tell you. And to me,
if you were accused of sex trafficking, abusing women, raping women, those are the kind of allegations that are ahead of you, and people have heard you talk about how you're a pimp, how you started a cam business, getting all these girls, suckering all these men out of money, you beating up women, abusing women, those things you say out of your mouth. Why do you think you're going to have a lot of Christians writing you letters in jail? I don't know if he says he didn't get any letters from Christians. Like, I would hope that maybe somebody sent him hey, you need to repent, come to Christ. I don't know if that's what he wants to hear. I don't know what all the Muslim fans were saying. But I'm not totally surprised if he didn't have Christian fans writing him letters in jail, knowing the sorts of accusations that he was going through. And even if all the accusations out there, the cases fall apart, that doesn't mean that the evidence isn't accurate, maybe, but that doesn't mean you can get enough stuff to actually put them to stick to put people in jail. He's still a pimp, admittedly. I don't know why he has Christian fans at all, if they're really Christian. I don't understand that. People can say things that you agree with, but doesn't mean that you're a fan. there were things that Tate was saying before I knew a lot of background on him. I'm like, that's interesting. Oh, that makes sense. Oh, this is, but if you know, I don't know why you're, excuse me, I don't know why you're a fan. So I don't think that's very compelling. She's trying, so he's bringing this up because he's still continuing the conversation of why Christians aren't dominating or growing in the way that he thinks they ought to be growing in the West. So I've also heard Andrew Tate articulate why he decided to convert. And I've never heard this version before about him being in prison and people writing his letters. I've heard different things. And he didn't say that to Candace Owens, because Candace Owens talked to him about it too. And Candace Owens didn't do a great job in her interview with him. It didn't seem like she wanted to do a lot of hard-hitting stuff. But that conversation did come up. And his reasoning, and this is, I would assume, probably what Wes has heard, because Wes didn't even actually say anything about how he felt about Andrew Tate. But he said that Christianity is not respected. And basically Muslims will fight for their religion and stand up for their religion in a way that Christians won't. And what he means by that is not just people being vocal, because there's vocal Christians all the time who defend the gospel. They're called apologists, defend the gospel. It's a defense of the gospel. That's this profession. People like David Wood, inspiring philosophy, lots of people all the time, Billy Graham, Frank Turek, defend the gospel. That's not what he means. He means by violence. He means by violence. And there's clips, and I'll play some stuff. But that's what he meant. That's what he meant. So that's the background I heard. I haven't heard I was in prison and all the Muslims sent me letters of support when I was on charges of sex trafficking. I don't know if that's a W for the Muslims, though. Anyway.
When I saw that, boom. Okay. So while we're talking, I'm writing this thing down. And I'm writing why people convert, because I'm actually curious. So this wasn't prepared. I'm literally, when you're talking, I'm writing this stuff down while we're having a conversation. Why do people convert to Christianity or Muslim or Jehovah or Seventh Day or Mormonism or Scientology or whatever it may be, right? And I've been through all of these guys. I used to go debate Scientologists all the time to know what they're thinking about, right? In LA at their main Scientology center. So one is through your example, testimony, the way you live. Like you showed grace with Billy Carson. I walked away and I said, my son should watch this guy because men would benefit from having grace, especially when you can be a bully and you show grace. That's even more honorable.
That's true.
Right? When somebody knows how to fight and beat you up and they don't, and they say, look, it's just not a good idea. Look, can we not fight? And walks away. This guy can whoop this guy's tail, but he doesn't. That's grace. Good for you, right? Versus, guy, let me go beat him up, show him the fact that I know Taekwondo or whatever. So to me, one is example testimony. Okay? Was that...
And what he's saying there is that Wes did demonstrate a lot of grace. Even though he gracefully just like sliced Billy apart, if you've seen that debate. And it's true. It was the sweetest takedown I've ever seen. It was amazing. You just got to watch it for yourself if you haven't seen it. But Andrew Tate doesn't seem to have respect so much for that grace. He likes the aggression. He likes aggression. And as far as Muslims, though, there were they do appreciate passion. So maybe that just kind of correlates with the vibe that Tate's giving, but he doesn't just like passion as far as debate. He appreciates that people are afraid of them, and they're afraid of them because of violence. And he said such things. I played a clip yesterday about how he was talking about Muslim women and how they wouldn't say certain stuff that other women would say because they'll get stoned in the face. And he's saying that as if it's some kind of positive. So he respects the violence that he perceives from the religion. We'll keep watching.
Set there for Andrew, I don't know. Two, the actual content, what's in the book of Quran, what's in the book of, what's in the Bible, what's in the book of Moroni, what's in L. Ron Hubbard's, what's the book called, Dianetics, right? I've found in my experience, less than 10% of the time is the content, because most people don't read the Bible. Most people don't read the whole book. It's the example, somebody in their lives. Third one I wrote down is disappointment, heartbreak, hurt. Hey.
Let me pause right there, because he's talking about reasons why people convert. And as far as the content goes, when Candace Owens was interviewing Andrew Tate, and I always kept meaning to do a reply video to that. I just haven't. Maybe I should prioritize that. But some people are like, "Oh, Candace Owens, she defended the gospel or stood up for Christianity." She really didn't. She was just kind of like, "Oh, I'm sad that you're no longer a Christian. I feel like we need you." I'm like, I feel like I wouldn't want this version of Andrew on my team. He can repent of his sins and have a radical transformation and be like, I was a degenerate, and all the stuff that I was saying before, please throw it out of the window. And I'm, God is great. I was not, but that's not the Tate that we've gotten or anything like that. He's kind of like, oh, that sucked. You're not a Christian. That makes me a little heartsick. What should have been said was the only thing that matters. You can feel how you feel. Because he's like, the Muslim respect their culture, and Christianity, like, who's a real Christian? Like, they don't really respect their culture, other stuff like that. Muslims, you see the culture, they honor God, whatever. And what should have been the response is, what should matter is whether the gospel is true or not. Because he's bringing up examples and stuff too, like church hurt. That is a major reason why people will leave the church and leave the faith. Our example is Jesus Christ, though. Like, there's a lot of people, and Wes is going to give a good analogy, I think, right after when he brings that up. But so I won't spoil it for you. But you have to look at the content and be like, is this true or not? At the end of the day, you cannot like the people and not like things about it. But is it true or is it false? And the reality is, when you compare Christianity and Islam, they do conflict. Somebody's right, somebody's wrong. And it seems pretty obvious, if you do critically analyze the data, that Islam is wrong. If you were going to take the critical eye, because again, Nabil had all this criticism for like typical stuff that Muslims will still say, not just Muslims, by the way, atheists and people with all kinds of different objections, because the objections that Nabil had were objections that David Wood had. And there was a Christian who was able to answer the questions and combat David Wood when he was an atheist. So it's just funny how there's these echoes of things that are happening. And there was a Christian who stood in the gap, who was there for David Wood, and David Wood got to be that Christian who stood in the gap to combat Nabil in the way that someone else did. It's just an amazing story. Please look up their testimonies. But they had this critical eye about Christianity, and it stood up to scrutiny. And if you take that same kind of determination to dismantle Christianity, you look at Islam, you're going to find that it's not true. I watched a podcast with was it Lee Strobel, and he talked about he wrote a book called I think it was Cold Case Christianity? Did he write that? But he's written a lot of books, but he was an atheist, and he decided he wanted to disprove the gospel. And the reason why he wanted to disprove the gospel is because he was an atheist and his wife was an atheist, long time sweethearts and stuff. And they didn't have any kind of conflict and stuff. And all of a sudden his wife's like, I'm a Christian now. And so then she wanted to go to church. She's like, I got to watch the kids on Sunday. And then she's like, I want to give to the church. He's like, I got a better idea. Let's just set the money on fire. Like he was very anti-gospel and stuff. And she was never like aggressive like he was, but they had a friendly neighbor who was a Christian, and she was there answering objections and stuff, and invited her to church, and eventually she converted. And so he wanted to convince his wife that Christianity wasn't real. And he used to be like the an editor at maybe I think it was maybe the Chicago Tribune. And so he thought he'd be able to disprove the whole Bible, or the gospel at least, because he realized if you could disprove the that Jesus claimed to be God, that he was crucified and was resurrected, if you could prove that, you destroy Christianity. So he thought he could disprove it and debunk it in like a weekend. He thought max, like he thought he could do it real quick, and it ended up being like a year's journey. And then he's like, oh gosh, I'm wrong. And he ended up converting. It's a really amazing story. So the Case for Christ, that's what it, thank you very much. I did start Googling him, and then I got distracted, but the Case for Christ is the name of the book that he wrote. There is a book called Cold Case Christianity, though. Lee Strobel wrote Case for Christ. And so take your skepticism and get to work. And Peter's right, that there's a lot of people who don't read the Bible and don't really know the content. There's a lot of people who think they know stuff and will say stuff like, the Bible says don't judge. It's like, you haven't read the Bible if you think that. No, it doesn't say that. And people have an idea of what it says, but they don't actually know. So he's right that a lot of people don't know the content. But I think church hurt is a big reason, though. Let's listen some more.
You hurt me. You weren't there. You're a Christian. And because of that, for the rest of my life, I'm going to be against you. Maybe Billy Carson. I don't know. I'm not trying to psychoanalyze. I'm just kind of watching, maybe for myself, for yourself, for everybody. You had a great example. Your family, your background, you're coming from a place, organized structure. A lot of people don't have that. They're coming from a different background. And
I do want to point out, though, that even though you do have good examples to look up to, and you do have a structured background, that doesn't mean that you're not going to get hit with church hurt and decide to leave the gospel. Because if you are a PK, a lot of PKs are like the preachers. This is for preachers' kids. A lot of preachers' kids are like the worst people in the church. And I'm a preacher's kid, and there's 7 of us, and there's people always talking about looking at you with hyper scrutiny. And you can't get away with stuff that other people get away with. Not that we're doing stuff, but people just look at you with a very critical eye, because you're the pastor's kids, and there's people who want you to fail, literally want you to fail. Literally, people want you to kids to fail. And you have to watch how people will say that they love your parents and the ministry and all this stuff, and they'll backstab them and leave. And that stuff piles up, and then you get you harden your heart, and then you're like, I don't want anything to do with the church. I don't want anything to do with the gospel. If this is going to be hurt after hurt after hurt. So just because you have examples and you have rigid structure doesn't mean that you won't also fall into that trap. Now, none of us did. But I just want to throw that out there, that perspective out there, that just because someone has that structure doesn't mean that they won't, they're not in danger. So all people need prayer, and, don't just, think that, oh, you had it made, or you had that structure. That doesn't mean that they're going to be solid, man.
Next one I wrote down is they were there for you. Hey, you have nobody for Thanksgiving? Come over.
Yeah.
Hey, what are you doing this Sunday? You got no, hey, come spend some time with us. We'll go to church together. Come with me to go to Mecca. Come with me to go to this. Come with me to go with that, right?
That's an important.
So for somebody
that's
like
important.
Andrew Tate today, whose brother's still a Christian, by the way, Tristan.
How? When? How? How his brother was in on it, by the way, with the whole pimp game stuff. How long do you think his brother's been a Christian? How do you think he professes his Christian faith? How do you think he uplifts Christ? How do you think he just demonstrates the fruits of the Spirit? How? It's not very obvious to me that Tristan, who's also accused of these things as well, is a Christian. I don't believe that, sir.
Yes. And Andrew's been going through some challenging times right now, because he announced he wants to run for prime minister of UK and all this other stuff. And, He's saying, if you're not for the British way, get out. If you're not for this, and indirectly he's calling out many of the things that's going on with the, Muslims in UK. The criticism isn't towards Christians or Jews or Scientologists or Catholics. It's a lot of criticism towards Muslims that they're getting. Going back to it.
By the way, some of the criticisms that have been lodged to Andrew Tate, some of his responses are, hello, Jew, like using as a pejorative. And to play up to like his Muslim base and stuff by being anti-Semitic. And I showed you guys a tweet the other day of him like, praising Yahya Sinwar and hoping that he could go out as glorious as he did and stuff. So like, bro. And I mentioned the other day that Ali Beth Stuckey had a great tweet saying like, I don't think we're going to like solve the grooming Muslim crisis gang situation in the UK by nominating a Muslim pimp to lead the UK. So I don't know what is it here with Beerbed David? Like, why say this stuff? Like, do you just believe he's innocent of all this stuff? Of these things, just even if just the things that he said that he admitted to were true, instead of like all these things that are alleged in the cases, he's still a pimp, man, and didn't stop the cam business until 2022. It wasn't that long ago. And now they're doing like then they started doing the Hustlers University stuff. And they say the most degenerate stuff all the time. So I don't understand where is the sympathy coming from. I don't get it. He's a smart guy. Like, are you just choosing to live with your eyes closed here?
Okay. Why isn't the church, the Christian church, the non-denominational church, even some of the other sects you put in it, why isn't it growing at the pace that Islam is?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we see globally is that we're seeing a shift in the demographics, in that for a long time, the Western world was Christianized. Maybe it wasn't necessarily Christian, but it was Christianized. And I actually think we're seeing a shift statistically in that's moving to the global South. That if you look at the continents of Africa and Asia, that the church is growing at a rapid rate in those countries. And I think there are various reasons for that, but I think we are genuinely seeing that.
Can I give a rebuttal to that?
Sure.
Okay. So again, I'm going to take you back to my example of running an insurance company.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody could say, well, look, yes, we're not growing in California, but I can tell you we're growing in Florida and we're growing in Texas and we're growing in Tennessee. That's because we were never in Texas, Florida, and Tennessee. We just moved into that market, right?
Sure.
So somebody may say, well, that's because we're just breaking into that market in Asia or in, South, whatever, Africa or some of these places, or even the Middle East. By the way, Christianity is growing in Iran in ways that most people don't know.
Yep.
The percentage is exponential in Iran that's growing. The stories I get in the testimonies, it's unbelievable when I see some of this data that comes back.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you're saying that, because my main focus is really the West.
Yeah.
Because West is the one that's got a black eye. UK is West.
Sure.
Us, West.
Sure.
Canada, West.
Yeah.
Why do you think the West has taken a hit when it comes down to attendance, the church? Why do you think?
Yeah. I'm going to back up. I'm going to answer that question, but I'm going to back up and say that to the kind of rebuttal of, well, we're introducing Christianity into those places. I would actually say that Christianity was there long before it was ever in the West.
Yep, absolutely.
In that North Africa was where a lot of the major church historians come from. Apart from the Apostle Paul, you have individuals like Athanasius of Alexandria.
Mm-hmm.
These are people who are Augustine. Saint Augustine was a North African. Like, some of the most prominent individuals within early church history were from the Middle East, were from Africa, and Christianity was in Asia and Africa long before it was anywhere remotely close to places like North America. And so I think what we're seeing actually is not an introduction, but the revival of a lot of those countries. So
I think that's a fair, and I think it could be both, right? Because some places it is a revival.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, let's revive,
Mm-hmm.
right? Let's get the attendance going again. Let's get excitement there again. But some of it is also because it was a smaller percentage of it there, right?
Sure.
In Iran, if you look at what percentage is Muslim, you will see a 98% number all over the place, right? If you
Yeah.
go in Asia, you will see some high numbers as well. So I can see that part. Like if you're going to go into Indonesia, I think Indonesia is 99%, if I'm not mistaken. It's some big number.
Yeah. We're the biggest Muslim country in the world.
Right,
Indonesia.
exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's the biggest Muslim country in the world. But the West,
Yes.
the West, you have no idea how excited I get when I see people like you. I can't tell you how much it excites me when I see guys like you. When I saw that, I'm like, you know what? I think you were good for Billy, because Billy can't hate you, walk away from you. Billy has to walk away and like you. We need that. We need those. I have a theory. I'm trying.
I don't know why he thinks that. That man said some really not nice stuff, crazy accusations and stuff about Wes and Andrew and stuff after he got just totally thrashed. So Wes was nice and stuff on the podcast, and nobody did anything wrong, and he just really embarrassed himself and made the situation way worse with his reaction. But I don't know why he's like, he can't hate you. Yeah, he sure can.
Trying to see from you that this is your world. What theories do you have?
Yeah.
Because you're doing your part. It's not like you're not doing it. This isn't criticism towards you.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? You're doing your part. You're going out there. You're sharing your testimony. You're doing it in a graceful way. You're setting the right example. You're growing your family. You have 3 kids. You're trying to, set the example. But again, responsibility of everybody else. One side, 1.9 billion, growing faster than us. The other side, flatline with churches declining.
Yeah. I think there have been a number of things that have happened in the West. In the last few decades, I think we want to hold on to the fruit of our Judeo-Christian values, but we want to ignore the roots that actually grew that fruit. And so I think you can look at individuals like there's a historian named Tom Holland. He's not the Spider-Man actor. That guy is also named Tom Holland. Yeah. Not this Tom Holland. He wrote a book called Dominion. He's out in the UK. Now, he's an agnostic, but he this giant brick of a book, Dominion, and talks about the fact that a lot of the things that we assume within our society that we consider good, even things like just the idea that humans have intrinsic worth by nature of being human, that is fundamentally a Christian value because it comes from the biblical testimony of humans being created in the image of God. Now, a friend of mine, Glenn Scrivener out in the UK, he runs an organization called Speak Life, wrote an excellent book that you, Patrick, need to make sure that you get your hands on called The Air We Breathe. And in The Air We Breathe, he takes a lot of this stuff that Tom Holland kind of encapsulates and he synthesizes it into a more bite-size kind of portion. And in The Air We Breathe, he goes through these qualities that we look at in the West in particular. Things like so the subheading is how we all came to believe in freedom, kindness, progress, and equality. And that he traces those roots directly back to Christianity. And I think one thing that's happened in the West in particular is we want to hold on to these values that are inherent to building the West, that are fundamentally Christian values, but we want to then also strip God from them. And what we're seeing, I think, in a lot of the confusion in the West is that doesn't work. In that the ability
what doesn't work in the West
to stripping the actual foundations of where those things came from. So you can say, okay, humans have value, and we should take care of people who are weaker than.
Sure.
But where does that come from? Because if all you are is matter and motion,
right?
If you're just the product of time plus matter plus chance,
right?
Then survival of the fittest actually should mandate that no, not all people have intrinsic value. In fact, some people have extrinsic value in that what they can contribute to society is actually how we should ascribe their worth. And so say if they're, and we're seeing this in Canada with MAID, medical assistance in dying, if they're elderly and they can no longer contribute, if they're sick, then the best option for them is actually to be eliminated. Because although we're going to dress this up in language like care and dignity, ultimately what it's saying is that this person no longer has enough to contribute to society, so we should remove them from society. And so I think our world wants to hold two things at the exact same time, which are fundamentally contradictory, in that it wants to say values, freedom, unity, purpose, kindness, progress, equality. These are things that built the West. But we also want to say, well, no, all that God stuff, we want to get rid of that. And once you start to do that, you run into issues with foundation. Where are you getting your actual reasoning to say? So Glenn Scrivener, my friend who I mentioned, who wrote the book, The Air We Breathe, he always says,
ordered the book.
Great. I'll make sure I let him know.
You got him a sale.
You did. I might even get him to sign it for you. One of the things he says is, when people say that morality, like where you get your morality from. And I've done this with, atheists who want to say that rape is wrong. Now, rape is wrong. Rape is objectively wrong. And I say, okay, why is rape wrong? Where do you get the objective morality to say that something like rape is wrong? And they say, how dare you say I don't have any morality? I'm saying, no. I'm not saying you don't have morality. I'm saying, where do you get that from? And Glenn has this analogy where he says, it's like saying, where did you get your pants from? Where did you buy them? And you saying, how dare you say I don't have any pants on? Like, no, I'm not saying you don't have any pants. Where's the source that your pants came from, Patrick? Where did you purchase them from? And so I think when we look at something like equality or morality or freedom, and we say, okay, where is the standard by which we can actually ground these things in order to use them as the objective goods that they are for our society? Where's that coming from? Now, I can ground that as a Christian in the objectivity of Scripture and in a God who does not change. And that's, where a lot of the founders of Western civilization got it from. Even if they weren't necessarily sold on Christianity wholesale, they're borrowing that from Christianity. It's the infrastructure that builds these things. And so
this is a really interesting really interesting conversation. I'm probably going to get that book that he mentioned too and go through it. But there's been and he ends up mentioning like Richard Dawkins and people like gosh, he's the one who said that the kids in Hunter Biden could have had dead children in his basement and he still would have he still would have voted for Biden. Seth Harris, is that his name? Nope. Atheist. Sam Harris. It's Sam Harris. Okay, so yeah, Sam Harris. They have this new atheist stuff, and you're trying to say, oh, the Bible's backwards and immoral and God delusion this, and they've spent all these years attacking Christianity and Hitchens and all those folks. Hitchens no longer with us. Attacking Christianity, and now you have Dawkins looking around and be like, oh, I'm kind of sad because Christmas. Where's all the Christmas stuff in the UK that I loved? And, and it's kind of sad. Like, I'm a cultural Christian. It's like, you've been working so hard to destroy Christianity. And then you see the fruits of your labor. And it's not a more secular society or humanist society or whatever these folks are striving for. People are just kind of maybe less inclined to be Christian, or they've watered down Christianity thanks to people like you. And now another religious culture has come in that you don't like and you don't trust and you find to be dangerous. And now all these Muslims are here and you don't get to enjoy the Christmas that you actually like. These are the consequences of your decisions. And what different atheists and some who have come to Christianity since then have realized is that this new atheism approach that they had doesn't fulfill people and meet the promises that folks had, which Wes does go on to talk about how theoretically it was one thing on paper, but in reality, it doesn't create a better world. So people have been trying so hard to destroy Christianity. People have watered down Christianity, softened messages so much. And there's a lot of secularization that has happened in the world, and even secularization that has happened in the church, where people have dulled values. And maybe you have churches of progressive people, but they're not really preaching the gospel. And it's done some damage. But am optimistic. I'm really optimistic when I see, you know, Wes on Joe Rogan and doors like that being opened and people excited to watch podcasts with theologians and on a Saturday night. That's amazing. That's amazing. So I do think there's a revival. He does mention that culturally there were things that were kind of forced in our society where people would, because he's like, why is the church declining and stuff? And he's like, well, societally, maybe there was more pressure for people to do those things. And there was even like laws in Canada where businesses can be open on Sunday because it was a Lord's Day and stuff. And we don't really have enforcements like that. But if people are going to church now, it's because they want to go to church. They're hungry. A lot of people are going because they're hungry for the word and they're genuine in their convictions and stuff. So I think COVID and people going online and stuff really, you know, damaged and stuff too. So I think we shot ourselves in the foot a lot. You know, you're basically telling the church it's not essential for people to go. And I think that hurt. And a lot of leaders made a lot of different mistakes as they were pressured by the government and so on. So I think there's more to it than that. But I don't think it's I think we're seeing a hunger for the gospel right now. You know, especially, you know, a hunger for the word. And I think we'll have a really good move of the spirit. And I think Islam, as the internet continues to explode and people have access to more information, people are really curious when they're faced with the truth and you're looking at one or the other because they do conflict. We both can't be right. We both can't be right. And the historical Jesus, at least those facts, you know, debunk the understanding of Islam all in itself. So, yeah, it was an interesting podcast with Wes, that and the Joe Rogan podcast. That was 3 hours. And but I do want to play a little bit of David Wood stuff talking about Andrew Tate before I let you guys go. And I didn't realize this video was 20 minutes, so I'm definitely not gonna play the whole 20 minutes. So I'm gonna skip around a little bit and try to find some of these clips of Tate. But this is how Andrew Tate got duped into Islam. So he did a video about this some time ago, and so 2 years ago. And so the page is Acts 17. So I encourage you guys to please check out David Wood, especially his testimony. It's just it's really, really incredible. But he went on to talk about, you know, the things that Andrew Tate said as far as, you know, getting involved in Islam. So let me go back to this clip.
The Cardi B of Muslim propagandists. But let's hear from the Tater.
Well, I think a lot of people who've been following me for a while understand that I've been very respectful of Islam for a long time.
Yeah, sure.
I was born in a Christian country. I was raised as a Christian, and I've always been very respectful of Islam. And it's become more and more obvious to me and more pertinent that Islam is the last religion on the planet.
Islam is the last religion on the planet. There are nearly 8 billion people in the world, but only one religion remains, according to world-renowned sociologist Andrew Tate. Remember when I said that you can give any reason, no matter how ridiculous, for converting, and the Muslim community will believe you? Announcing that you converted because Islam is the only religion left is Exhibit A. Saying that Christianity doesn't exist, that Judaism doesn't exist, that Hinduism doesn't exist is so utterly moronic that there's only one place in the world you could get away with saying it, and that's in an interview with someone like part-time stripper and future webcam boy, Mohammed Hijab. But let's pretend that Tate's claim isn't the most idiotic thing anyone has ever said, and we'll try to figure out what he means.
What does Christian mean? Like, who's not a Christian? You go to Christian nations and everyone says they're a Christian. Look how they live their lives. Go into the average church. Is anyone actually fearful of God? Anybody? No. The girls are out on Saturday night drinking, and then they turn up to church because their parents made them.
Now, this is interesting. This sound
it'll be interesting, and the dialogue continues and is good. I'm gonna try not to interrupt too much so we can get through it in the show. But I do want to point out that he's like, who's actually Christian? Everybody says that they're Christian. I just want to point out that his brother claims to be a Christian. That doesn't mean that he's actually fearful of God, that he actually lives honoring the commandments, that he's actually producing fruit of the Spirit. You know, so just want to point that out. A lot of people identify. That doesn't make you what you say you claim. Just like some men claim they're women, doesn't mean you are one. Some people claim that they're Christian, doesn't mean that they are.
Sounds like a common Islamic caricature of Christian churches. And notice hijab sitting there agreeing with everything the tater says. Churches are filled with sluts, and all they do is sit around getting drunk and high and banging a bunch of guys, and then they go to church. My church isn't like that at all. My last church wasn't like that at all. My church before that wasn't like that at all. Maybe there are churches like that, but I've never been to one. And yet, according to the webcam king and his new part-time stripper bestie, it's okay to completely generalize churches in this way. You Muslims who are watching, let me ask you this. If you were watching an interview between a Christian preacher and a former Muslim who had just converted to Christianity, and the former Muslim said, I left Islam because Christianity is the only religion left in the world. Islam is dead because the mosques are filled with terrorists. All they do in mosques is sit around learning to build bombs and plotting the next attack. It's all they do there. If you saw that, would you think that the former Muslim had any integrity whatsoever? Would you think that his generalization was okay? Wouldn't you be thinking to yourself, what's this lunatic talking about? We're not building bombs in my mosque. Now, are there lots of Christians who don't take Christianity very seriously and so they don't try to follow Jesus? Yes. And there are Christians who take Christianity very seriously and dedicate their lives to following Jesus. Are there lots of Muslims who don't take Islam very seriously and so they don't try to follow Muhammad? Yes. And there are Muslims who take Islam very seriously and dedicate their lives to following Muhammad. Every religion has a spectrum of followers. So, talking to the Muslims who are watching, why is it that when you look at any other religion, you point to the people who aren't following it and you say, see, that's the religion. But when we look at Islam, we're only supposed to look at the absolute best Muslims if we want to know about the religion. Why do you cheer when people apply ridiculous generalizations to every religion but yours? Is that the only way to make you feel good about your religion? But the tater's got more. The great webcam guru and Hustlers University professor says that Islam reflects his personal values.
Islam very closely reflects my personal beliefs. Through my personal life, I've learned that if you don't have standards and you're not a strong person who's prepared to defend his ideas, you'll be crushed.
Yes.
And we look at most religions in the world today, which are not prepared to defend their ideas. What's happened to them? They're just getting crushed.
Did you catch that? Islam is ready to defend its ideas. Other religions aren't. What could he possibly mean here? How many Christian apologetics books and Christian apologetics ministries and Christian apologetics channels are defending the ideas of Christianity? A bunch. Are there Muslims who defend Muslim ideas? Of course there are. Are there Jews who defend Jewish ideas? Of course there are. Are there Hindus who defend Hindu ideas? Of course there are. Are there atheists who defend atheist ideas? Of course there are. So what can he possibly mean here when he suggests that Islam must be true because Islam defends its ideas? Well, as it turns out, he's not talking about defending your ideas with arguments and evidence. He's talking about defending your ideas with violence. He made this much clearer in an interview before he converted to Islam. Watch him explain, before he converted to Islam, how Islam fixes the problems that men are facing.
Islam fixes a lot of the problems that men are currently facing.
Yeah.
The problems we're discussing on this show, Islam fixes all of them, right?
Islam fixes problems. That's why so many men are packing their bags and moving to Muslim countries, because Islam fixes problems. Wait a minute. That's not what's happening at all. Millions of Muslim men are fleeing Muslim countries and moving to the West because they can't stand living in Muslim countries, despite the fact that Islam supposedly solved all their problems. Oh, well, maybe they're coming here to fix all the problems.
If I had to bet on one religion as if I were betting on the stock market for the future, you have to bet on Islam. Because Muslims are intolerant. And I'm not saying that disrespectfully, because if you're tolerant of everything, then you stand for nothing.
What did he mean earlier when he said that Islam is the only religion left in the world? He just told you. Islam is intolerant. Other religions are tolerant. So Islam is the only one that's going to survive. If he's going to pick a religion, he's going with Islam. Tell us about Christians, Tater.
Christians are so tolerant now. You don't believe it. They have gay pastors that I'm not even anti-gay, but if the book says don't have, like, what do you believe in now? If you're tolerant of everything, you stand for nothing.
But by the way, he's not anti-gay, I guess, because he thinks it makes sense for men to sleep with hot, quote unquote, hot trans women than, I guess, ugly fat chicks or whatever. So I'm like, that's a take. That's a take.
Nothing.
This guy really, really needs to do some research. There are gay pastors and Christians don't kill them, so Christianity is doomed. That's interesting. Want to see how fast you can expose someone as a hypocrite? Meet America's first openly gay imam. Here's another gay imam helping LGBTQ Muslims in South Africa. Oh, look, it's a gay imam in France. And here's a gay imam in Canada and another gay imam in Australia. You Muslims who are watching, please explain this to me. If someone says to you, there are gay pastors, so Christianity is dead, and there are gay imams, so Islam is the religion of the future, how do you not spot the inconsistency? I really want to know how complete, utter, total hypocrisy became the foundation of your religion. But Tate isn't done. Believe it or not, he's about to say something that is absolutely correct.
I can walk through London with a t-shirt saying Jesus is gay and nothing will happen to me. If I did the same thing with the Islamic prophet, I'd be dead before I got to the end of the street.
Boom.
Why won't Christians kill you for mocking Jesus? Because Jesus specifically commanded his followers not to kill for him. If there was ever a time when it would have been appropriate to defend Jesus with violence, it was when a mob showed up to take him and crucify him. And his followers were ready to fight. What did Jesus say when Peter pulled out a sword and took a swing to protect him? He said, "Put your sword back into its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword." And then he goes on to say that if he really wanted to defend himself from these guys, he'd call out the angels. Jesus didn't need his followers to defend him with violence. But Muhammad ordered his followers to execute people for making fun of him. So Islam must be true, according to Andrew Tate. Here, watch.
That's how much they believe and respect. And I respect people who stick up for what they believe in.
Yeah.
It's not even about me believing in it. I respect them because they believe and they will defend. Muslims are the only people who will defend their religion. They will defend their beliefs. They refuse to be mocked.
Mhm.
They refuse to be insulted. And I respect that about them.
Did you catch that? Remember earlier when he said that Muslims defend their ideas? We were wondering what he could possibly mean, since lots of other religions and ideologies defend their ideas. In context, we see what he meant. Islam defends its ideas with violence. And in Andrew Tate's mind, this means that it's going to outlast all other religions. And so if he's going to join a religion, he's going to join Islam because it's the only one that's going to survive feminism and LGBTQ issues and so on.
Yeah. So anyway, that's there's a little bit left, but you guys can please follow David Wood. Please look up his story. Please look up the Bill story. It's amazing stories. I really love David Wood, and I'd love to meet and talk to them one day, but or talk to him anyway. But yeah, Tate's a not so great guy with not so great reasons why he decided to convert. And people do defend their faith all the time, but like David said, Jesus didn't need his followers to commit acts of violence to defend them. Wes points out the scripture was you have to have a reason for the hope that lies within you. Like you have to give a response. And that's one of the reasons why he studies so much, so he could be able to defend the reliability of the gospel, the historical Jesus, and all that stuff. But there's also, because Wes keeps getting complimented on his demeanor and how he approaches stuff. And he's like, well, how he responded to Billy Carson, that's how he's always been responding and preaching the gospel. Because the other part of that verse is you do it gracefully and humbly and with kindness. And I'm like paraphrasing the scripture, I don't know, like offhand, sorry, my memorization is not like stellar, sorry. Everybody has flaws, guys. But so he doesn't go out there with a sword to defend the gospel, but he's still, being elevated, just doing his due diligence. And he's where the Lord wants him to be right now. So he's defending the gospel respectfully. And what Tate admires in Islam is pride, and it's all about ego. And Wes does point this out, that some philosopher or a scholar, somebody that he quoted, they talk about how so many religions and ideologies are about survival of the fittest. But Christianity is different in the sense that it's about the fittest sacrificing himself for the weak, with God, Jesus Christ deciding to sacrifice himself for us. So it is uniquely different compared to other ideologies of the world and other religions stuff of the world. And Andrew Tate's idea of what is strong, and there was one girl I used to work with, and she was a Muslim, and she just could not wrap her mind around, like, why would Jesus sacrifice himself on a cross? And to me, and I regret not kind of knowing more stuff and not having a better apologetic at the time, but I was just so floored. I'm just like, because he loves us. Like, I couldn't wrap my mind around what she couldn't understand about God being willing to do that. And I'll end with this. There's a I've mentioned this before, but the movie, there's a movie from the father, Phil, I think it's Phil from the Duck Commanders, Phil Robinson. And I think it's Phil Robinson. Let me Phil Robertson. There was a movie about his life and how he came to Christianity that is really good. And when he is at his lowest and kind of ready to be converted, make that shift and stuff, it's called The Blind. It came out in 2003. I mean, it's 2023. I'm sorry. It's a really good movie. And so the pastor describes Christianity about like basically kind of the same concept. Like so many stories are about trying to reach the top of the mountain and people doing all the stuff to reach the top of the mountain. But Christianity is a story about someone who's at the top of the mountain who came down. And I'm not even it's worth watching the film just to hear, kind of that even explanation. But it's a really good testimony in his life, how God did save him and turned around life for his family. But a lot of people can't grasp, and a lot of Muslims can't grasp the idea of like God coming here to become a baby. They can't compute why God would do that. It's really foreign. And even like they have that slave master relationship with God. It's not, he's our father. It's not the same kind of dynamic that we have. So I can see why Tate, as he explains what we know about his character, and he's saying the things that are attractive that he sees in this other religion that attracts him. I can see that because there's a lot of things about Muhammad that he did for himself, and his views about or people's views about what you get when you commit jihad and you get all your virgins and all this stuff. There's so much stuff that just feeds into the hedonistic desires of the world. But Christianity is so much about crucifying your flesh, taking up your cross. So I understand, but he's not Christian, neither his brother. And they're saying he converted from what? Because I wouldn't say you can culturally be Christian or surrounded in a society where everyone says that, but the question is, do you believe? Do you put your trust in Jesus? And I know this episode is very religious. You guys know I'm religious, so it's probably no surprise to anybody. Do you put your trust in him? Do you believe that Jesus is God, that he died, that he was crucified, he died on the cross for your sins, and that he rose again? Do you believe in that? Okay. That's where you go from there. And when people convert, you should be like, have you analyzed these facts? Are they true or are they false? Because Islam cannot be correct about what happened to Jesus on the cross, and Christians be correct. Somebody's wrong, and the facts are with us. It's not with them. So, anyway, that's the show for today. I hope it was enjoyable and informative and inspiring. And all that stuff. So thank you guys for joining me today. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on the website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate, because it does cost to stream and run my site, all that stuff. So you guys can support. I very much do appreciate it. I have merchandise you guys can check out. So I encourage you guys to do that. I got the Be Better Not Bitter shirt. I got some pro-life and where's my pro-life stuff? Because that's not my pro-life stuff. There's my pro-life stuff there. I have my book, of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion. That's available. It's up behind me. I have 18 books altogether. Most of them are fiction, but I do have non-fiction books. I do have Slay Your Fear, How to Overcome a Spirit of Fear, but I do also have, like I said, of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion. So I encourage you guys to check that out on Amazon. And I will get my responses to that Jubilee video out as soon as I can. I haven't started the editing it, but I did record it all last night, and it took a very long time. It took a very long time because it was a long video anyway, plus the commentary. So there'll be lots of content on the horizon. So make sure that you guys are subscribed and hit the notification bells and so on. God bless you guys, and I will see you tomorrow.